Today, I'm gonna take my stage 1 430 horsepower 034 tuned Audi S4 and transform it by giving it all the cooling modifications that it could possibly need.
Dude, what are you doing?
Nothing, man. Just testing out this new pipe 034 sent us.
That's not a pipe, that's for the heat exchanger.
Now, I'm planning to run some big pulleys and turn the supercharger up to the moon. And in turn, that's gonna create a lot more boost, but it's also gonna create a lot more heat. So today, I'm gonna go all out, rip the entire cooling system out of this Audi S4, upgrade it to make sure that this TVS 1320 stays as cold as possible. Now, a huge issue for these supercharged 3.0T engines is the cooling. And I'm not talking about the engine cooling, I'm talking about the supercharger itself. This TVS 1320 makes a lot of heat, even with a factory tune. Now, you guys remember that I actually replaced my supercharger intercoolers in the beginning, but that's only tip of the iceberg. The way that the supercharger cooling system works is
by integrating an air-to-water intercooler setup. The water in the supercharger system is kept cool by a dedicated coolant loop, which includes a heat exchanger and a pump to circulate the coolant. The supercharger's compressed air passes through the supercharger intercoolers, then absorb heat from the compressed air, allowing the intake air temperatures to drop, which then in turn maximizes the engine's efficiency and power and overall performance thanks to the colder air temperature.
More power, baby!
What we're looking to do here is to maximize the efficiency of this entire setup.
But before we get to actually installing anything, let me show you exactly what parts we'll be putting on this car. Let's get right into it. First up is this beautiful CSF radiator that I have right here. It doesn't just come with beautiful billet welded end tanks, it also includes CSF's B-tube technology, so it should help us with the engine cooling. It also comes with an upgraded plate style transmission cooler that's also built into this radiator, so it should also help our transmission stay cooler. And best of all, it replaces the OEM radiator. It's a drop fit, leak tested item, and I won't ever have to worry about my radiator breaking on me. Now let's talk about the most important part of any supercharged cooling system, and that's the heat exchanger. Now there are a few options on the market that don't flow as well, that don't have that much capacity, or that absolutely lie about what they do. Now 034, I believe, is one of the best options there is, and so that's what we're gonna be going with. It's a dual pass heat exchanger. It is over 2.5 times larger than the OEM one, and it's gonna do exactly what we need it to do, and that's provide as much cooling as possible. Now it's a full kit. It comes with everything you could possibly need, so you don't need any special tools or any custom work. You just have to bolt it onto the crash bar. That's it. We're also going to be utilizing 034's upgraded billet supercharger intercooler screws, so we don't have to worry about those pesky plastic intercooler screws ever stripping out on us again. Now moving on, we have some really cool parts from Jose at Merc Racing. Jose is the same guy that has built and manufactured the TVS 1900 big blower kit for the B8 and the C7 platforms. What he sent us are some pretty cool parts that will help us complete our cooling system. First up is the CWA150. This is going to be a huge upgrade over our OEM CWA50. It's going to help us reduce our intake air temps by maximizing the coolant flow through the entire supercharger loop, meaning we'll have faster recovery times as well as that means we'll have faster recovery times, but overall improve the entire efficiency of our cooling setup. Now, the second part that he sent us is this divorce tank that we'll be utilizing. It actually is going to enable us to divorce the supercharger and the engine coolant loops, keeping them separate, meaning we'll actually be able to run 100% distilled water with water wetter in the supercharger and keep the OEM coolant in the engine to make sure that we don't destroy anything in the engine. Now, because distilled water has better heat transfer properties, we should be able to even further maximize our cooling efficiency. Now, that was just a summary of all the big stuff. Let's look at some of the small stuff that we're gonna need as well. Now, what these are some Velocity AP supercharger coolant inlets. What they're gonna do is replace the OEM intercooler Y piping. It's restrictive and it's also prone to cracking. What these are gonna do is bolt up directly to the supercharger intercoolers. They're also going to give us the ability to run 3/4 hoses. And this is where everything else comes into play. We have some 3/4 hoses here, some straights, we have water wetter, some specialty tools that will make our life a little bit easier. If we have new coolant for the engine loop as well. Most importantly, we have some Y fittings, some T fittings, and some straights that will make this all happen. And now that you guys know what's going on, let's get the bumper off and rip everything out of here. Well, now that the front bumper is off, we just got to remove this crash bar next, and then we'll get to removing this OEM tiny heat exchanger out. They say size don't matter. It does matter. here. Now all that's holding this heat exchanger is a single T30 right here, and this clip, boom. Our OEM one comes right out. Look at this tiny little thing. Oof. Belongs in the trash. Careful, right? Careful. Piss, piss. Get the entire car taken apart just for this. But this headlight removed, I have a lot more space now to maneuver this radiator in and out. That should give me a lot of access to all those connections right here that we still gotta remove. We could literally go dual pulley right now. This would be so easy. Yeah. Oh. Nice. All right, now our stock pipes can come out here. Just to show you guys how restrictive this is. This is like 3/8 that goes to 5/8. We're gonna replace all of this with 3/4 lines. Well guys, I got the CSF radiator next to the OEM radiator, and now I need to figure out how to swap the OEM fans over to the CSF radiator. And it seems like it's held on by just some plastic clips, but we gotta get it off and we gotta move it over to the new one. Just 2 clips, one on each side. There's one right here. If you just pry down, fans will pop right out. There you go, boom. Cool, and now off comes the OEM and onto our new big bad boy. Ain't going nowhere. Ain't going nowhere. Well, our radiator is officially about to go in. The night might be coming to an end, and we're gonna pause it just for tonight because I don't want my neighbors to get mad, but we still have a ton of parts more to install, so I'll see you tomorrow. Day 2 of the install, and things always take longer than you think they do, and we still have all of these parts to install. So the next thing that we need to do is to make sure that all of the OEM cooling components are ripped out, and we gotta start installing the new stuff, starting with this heat exchanger. Just to show you guys, this is the OEM inlet, and this is very restrictive, probably one of the best mods you can ever do. And props to Velocity AP for finding out that this OEM inlet hose is not just restrictive, it also doesn't even distribute the flow equally to both intercoolers. And if you look inside right here, it looks like it's a 5/8 inlet, but inside it actually gets even smaller. So this is going straight into the trash. Now here are the brand new Velocity AP supercharger intercooler inlets that we're gonna install. And as you can see, yes, they're the same diameter, but they're gonna make sure that I can later on route my hoses to make sure that the flow coming in and coming out of the intercoolers remains exactly the same. And for the price, well, I mean, it's a pretty good deal. The best way to install these is to get them pretty much hand tight, and then it doesn't require a lot of torque on these, right about 9 to 10 Newton meters. This is aluminum, so make sure you don't strip it out. Now that we have our supercharger inlets installed, we need to move on and remove the OEM coolant pump and install the divorce reservoir. The OEM auxiliary coolant pump is what drives the supercharger loop. And since we're divorcing our system, not only will I show you how to divorce that real quick, we're also gonna upgrade this to the CWA150, which will improve our recovery times and really everything else about our cooling system for the supercharger. So now let's get to ripping out this OEM coolant pump. I have my divorce reservoir right here. I just wanted to quickly mock it up for you guys. So we're gonna reuse this OEM location right here, and it should sit something like that right there without interfering anything, and sitting very nice and flush actually. It's gonna look beautiful with that Merc Racing logo right there. Holding this coolant pump is simply one 10mm nut, and just like that, this comes out. There you go, boom, that's it. And there's our CWA150 that has lived a long life, but it's finally gonna get upgraded to a real coolant pump. To divorce our supercharger and engine coolant loop, what we have to do is install this little cap. Now Merc Racing sent us his. It's an awesome little cap, and it's gonna block off this port right here. And that's where everything kind of goes together. We're gonna face it up here, nice, so we can see the Merc Racing, sweet. And all we need to do now is just cap it off. There's that. And we have our big bad boy CWA150 going in here. Kind of trying to mock it up. This side is gonna run to the bottom of the heat exchanger. And then if you look right here, this is gonna connect with the T up to the divorce tank, and then it's gonna go down into the hot side of the supercharger. I just wanna make sure that everything lines up pretty good here, so I'm just gonna mark it right there. Now right here we have a bunch of 3/4 hose that I bought from AutoZone, obviously coolant hose, and I'm gonna utilize these 90-degree fittings. Now there's a couple of ways that I could have done this, but honestly this is the best way to eliminate any more splices that we already have in the system. So here is the concept of how I'm gonna make sure that each side gets an equal flow. Now we're gonna utilize these 3/4 90-degree fittings, and they're gonna come off the hot side, which is the top, and then the cold side, which is gonna be our bottom. So our cold fluid is gonna come in and then come out with the hot side from the top. And then I'll show you how I route that. But we're gonna have these nice 90-degree fittings sitting just like this, and they're gonna route all the way down. And then on the other end, we'll have this Y connector, where we're gonna have both hot sides coming in into one, and then obviously two cold sides coming into one as well. It's gonna make sure that our supercharger intercoolers get equal flow across both banks. So now that we have most of our plumbing done here, we got our Merc Racing divorce kit ready to go. We have our line ran here for the heat exchanger pressure bleed. While we're up here, we might as well install these 034 supercharger intercooler screws. The OEM ones love to strip out, and I've stripped mine out multiple times, and it sucks. I just gotta make sure that you don't over torque these, because the intercooler cores are aluminum. And it's fairly easy to remove these if you've bled these cores before. Just to show you guys the comparison here, plastic versus some nice aluminum. Now, I'll run you guys through the plumbing in just a second here to show you how everything is routed, but next step would be to plug this repinned harness. However, we're gonna go one step further, and we're gonna cut one of the wires that are right here. Now there's three wires that run in here.
There's a PWM wire that we're gonna snip. There's a negative and a positive that provide power for this pump. However, what I want to do is make sure that the pump is running 100% at all times to make sure that I get maximum cooling efficiency no matter what. Now, some say that that might limit the life of the pump. However, my boy Jose at Merc Racing always got me covered, so I'm not too worried about it. And most importantly, it's super simple. All you gotta do is snip one wire and you can always reconnect it if you don't want it. Don't crucify me, but this is just how we're gonna do it. We have our PWM wire snipped. There you go. That's it. There's our harness.
Now let's talk about how everything is routed. Now, as I previously explained, the top hoses right here are our hot line, which run straight into our T-fitting. It's right down right here, and that connects to our divorce tank and then also gets sucked in by the CWA150. The CWA150 will then push the hot coolant out of the supercharger intercoolers into the low side of our 034 heat exchanger, which then will go from the bottom to the top, and then the cold fluid is going to go into the cold side, which then will go right back up and into the bottom side of the supercharger intercooler course. Simple as that. So now that we have our engine and supercharger coolant loop 100% divorced, before we put our heat exchanger on and finish up all of our plumbing, I want to add some of this cool VP cool down into our engine loop, and then also we'll top off the coolant right now to make sure that the radiator is not leaking and that all of our fittings are at least tight. We have our crash bar painted right here, nice and clean. Not perfect, but it will do the job. So we're gonna set that down, and I just wanna compare the 034 heat exchanger to the OEM one. Obviously, the size difference is absolutely insane. They say size don't matter. It does matter. It's gonna provide a lot more cooling, almost 2.5 times larger in the frontal area, has significantly more capacity, and it's gonna flow really, really well. And it's gonna look even better behind our RS4 grille. Now, you also can't forget that they have instructions on their website on every single part that they sell. So I've never installed this personally, and though I know how to do a heat exchanger, I've done a ton of them, they have very clean, very detailed instructions on how to install this heat exchanger. Now, Merc Racing does provide a 1/4-inch NPT fitting for his heat exchangers, but since we're using 034s, we gotta use an 1/8-inch NPT. And unfortunately, I couldn't find a 3/8 to an 1/8-inch NPT 90, so we're just gonna use a straight, and it should sit just fine. Be one of the most beautiful pieces of kit I've ever seen. For me, this is like building Legos. Maybe much more fun than that. So here's our brand new 034 heat exchanger. It's gonna look amazing behind our grill. Let's put it on. Why bother doing all this at night when we could do it during the day and show you guys how beautiful this transformation is going to be for our front end, at least for now. To take off this front grille, obviously you got to have the front bumper off, so we already have it off. We might as well do it now. There's a bunch of T25 screws here that you have to take off all the way around. Once you do that, the front grille will pop out and we can put our RS4 style grill in. Careful not to break anything. These clips snap like no tomorrow. There you go. Boom. Not only does it look so much better, it also gives us a lot more flow over the heat exchanger. Instead of being closed off like the OEM grill was, the point of this divorce tank is then you're able to start bleeding the heat exchanger and get all that air going, coming out from the top of the heat exchanger right into this tank. So it acts as an OEM reservoir, same concept. Now we need to bleed the supercharger
intercoolers just to make sure that they have no air in them. And there's usually a little bit of air that comes out. And look at that, no air bubbles, perfect. So we know that side is good. Check this side, make sure it's all bled. Look at that, no air bubbles.
Well guys, I'm really happy that we finally got the cooling done. That's arguably the most important part that you could do on these S4s. Most importantly, we'll finally get better flow over the heat exchanger. And now it is finally time for some chassis components. So I hope you guys have enjoyed that. None of these parts are cheap. Go become a member of needforbuilt. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and I'll see you guys in the next one.